now we're ready to start with our floor. So what I'm going to do is wipe off the floor with a rag. I've went through with my vacuum already and got all the dust off the floor. I'm going to wipe it all down, make sure that all the fine dust particles are all gone. Once the plywood is dry, I'm going to use my white carpenter's glue, go in a really nice tight swirl pattern, about a 4-inch swirl pattern with the glue, and then follow with putting a 4-inch by 4-inch grid of screws across this whole plywood floor. Okay, so now I'm ready to install the subfloor. It's 3/8 thick spruce plywood going on top of the existing subfloor. Now this subfloor, just from taking a visual look, has only been nailed. So before I start with putting my new stuff on top, I'm going to run a bunch of screws, probably about 4 to 6 inches apart along these joists, just so that this plywood is holding tight onto the joist. And then when I do my random grid afterward, that will just attach the 2 layers together with the glue. So very important that you're using a wood screw, a wood floor screw, sorry, not just a wood screw. They have a certain thread, the certain way that the threads go around the screw that is meant for subfloor. So just a little tip, and the thickness just be twice the thickness of the material that you're screwing down. So got all my lines, you can see marked here with pencil, and I'm just going to proceed putting a screw every 4 to 6 inches. Okay, so I've got the screws ran into the floor, the existing floor. I've pre-cut my 3/8 plywood down to size. I went running this way, which is 90 degrees to the joists. Whenever possible, run your sheeting 90 degrees, which means if the joists are running this way, you want to run your plywood this way. So I've notched out for this. This is not a main concern of mine, this hole that's here, because we're putting a fiberglass shower pan here after, so I'm just going to plywood right through it for today. And when I plumb in the new fiberglass shower pan, I'll be drilling a new hole for that, and the shower pan itself will not be bearing down on this plywood hole, so it's no problems to leave it. One main problem when people do subfloor is they assume that they've got to use a PL400 or like a caulking style glue adhesive, which is what you would use on a joist, because there's slight imperfections on a joist, so when you put the thicker bead down, it trues it up a little bit. In this case, you use just plain old white or yellowish carpenter's glue. You're going to want to make sure it's meant for wood. This stuff spreads really, really thin, so I like to drill a 1/4-inch hole in the top and start pouring glue out on like a 4-inch swirl pattern, which I'm going to show you. I've got a pencil line across here marking where my sheet joint is, so I won't glue past there. So I'm going to glue up this whole area, then drag in my sheet and begin to screw it down. Okay, so the idea is to bond these two layers together really tight. You can see here that once we put our plywood on top of this glue swirl pattern, that it's going to really sit flat and bond these two layers together forever. So now I'm going to drag in my sheet and begin screwing. Making sure I'm back on my original line when I did my dry fit of these pieces. It's all looking good. So just to start, I'm gonna run screws down in the corners, down the center, and down the other side, and then I'm gonna mark my 4-inch grid pattern out. Okay, so now I've got my 4-inch grid marked out. I prefer to use pencil over chalk line just because chalk line leaves a powder, and we are again gonna use some thin set to glue down the tile eventually, or whatever you're gonna do on this plywood. You don't want any particles of anything stopping your bonding from happening, so I just marked the grid out with a pencil instead of a chalk line. Now I'm gonna use my floor screws and start going.